Is there a doctor in the house?
Doctor, you have a visitor in the main lobby.
Hello, and welcome to the Talk To The Doc podcast. Here, we get it in. We dig into the real issues that drive or stall growth for today's organizational leaders. In this episode, we shine a light on one of the toughest challenges facing business leaders today, staffing and HR. I'm your host, Steve the Dr. Meek, and the doctor is in. Welcome today to my guest, James Bier. James, how are you doing today?
Doing real good, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Hey, well, our audience only listens to like superstar experts, so you got to talk a little bit about yourself. Can you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure, and they're going to have to slum it today because you are stuck with me. But Steve and I, full transparency, have known each other for a while. I consider Steve a friend. I hope he would consider me as well. But it's certainly an honor and a privilege to be on this platform, and I appreciate the time and the attention. I'm one of three partners at Apollo Staffing. We have a dedicated solution line. We're a technology search firm. We handle recruiting, and in particular, we have a niche within Steve's vertical. It's known as the MSP or the VAR, the channel ecosystem. So we have been around for a very long time. And one of the things that we have kind of going for us, although there's not a lot of gray hair, we've been doing this for almost 25 years now. So we're about to turn a quarter century, which in and of itself, I think, is marketable. But certainly we're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, just like Steve and his team is. And we're very honored and privileged to be here today to discuss some challenges, some hacks, if you will, that we've bumped into in our quarter century of business.
Yeah, that's the whole reason for the conversation today. It's great to have some insight into our industry, but I think just having that insight into every industry as well. I thought that would be helpful for our audience today since, we run the gamut of local government, healthcare, manufacturing, all kinds of professional services and other organizations. So just being able to help people understand a little bit more about what to expect in the world of staffing and technology staffing. I know you guys do a little bit of everything, but I thought you guys would know a lot more specifically about things. And so I'd like to go ahead and just jump right into the vitals since you're all on, and I can see you're ready to talk because you got your cowboy hat off.
That's right. That's right.
So you're ready to get going.
Yeah.
So I almost said ready to rock and roll, but that means you're ready to country.
That's right.
So,
we are always ready to country, Steve, as you well know. So absolutely.
I remember that when they hung your jersey in the rafters.
Yeah. Something like that.
Well, one of the things I do is I like to go through the vitals. So this is a doctor's appointment to me, a chance to learn a little bit more about you and what you do and stuff. But one of the things I asked you as part of our pre-interview was to give me the pulse in your mind. What's the current state or kind of market trend of the industry? And one of the numbers that you came across to me with was that on average, it takes U.S. companies 42 days to fill an open role.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's a ballpark number. I can't recall where our team pulled that from. That sounds about right. And one of the challenges, regardless if you're looking to recruit for a technical position, a clerical, finance, or accounting, there seems to be some obstacles with nowadays a flood of candidates, or at least the narrative that there is a large swath of candidates. And that's more than a narrative. That's true. As most people, I think, can relate. If your traditional recruiting methodology starts or may be primarily posting a job, be that on a website, on your website, on Indeed, on ZipRecruiter, on LinkedIn, that does bring in a swath of candidates. There are automation tools out there. Anybody that is looking to potentially explore a career change can set up automation that then floods using keyword or Boolean search, just their candidate profile, their resume into that opening. And it can become mind numbing for whoever it is that's in charge of getting that position filled to swim to kind of swim through the mud, if you will, of all of these candidates. So there becomes a white noise factor in traditional recruiting methodology. So what we try to preach and what we really try to take things when we work and counsel our partners, our clients, is try to find a strategy that will allow you access to candidates that aren't replying to ads, that don't have a resume on a resume job on a board like a Indeed or Zip. How do you penetrate that? I wish there was a magic bullet, Steve. I do. There's not. There's some strategies and some hacks we can get into a little bit later. But because of that, just going through that minutia of sifting through all of these candidates can be very cumbersome. And finding a way to kind of get right to the meat, get all the fat away from the bone, is critical when trying to get a role filled at any level and at any department within an organization.
Now, taking a step back, if we know it takes 42 days or more to fill a role, that's great. That's better than it has been. I remember during COVID or post-COVID, there was periods where, it took longer and, candidates often didn't show for things. It sounds like things are a lot better with a little bit more of a flooded market. That's still like a month and a half for an organization hiring.
Yeah.
Are the things an organization should be doing all the time, even when they're not hiring, just to stay ready for that month and a half lead time that they need to bring someone on?
Well, regardless of the organization or the vertical field they may be in, healthcare, SLED, education, higher education, it doesn't matter. It's always a good time, especially if you've got a growth strategy, to always be looking. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. Some people use it in different methods. As an owner of a search firm, we certainly use it. We're heavy power users, but just building out a LinkedIn network. I am not a huge social media guy, with the exception of LinkedIn. And even now, I'm starting to see there was always an unwritten rule amongst LinkedIn content contributors, is trying to keep it kind of focused, buttoned up, and hyper-focused on business only. But building out that network, there is gold in a LinkedIn network. It's something that I take a lot of pride in, and just staying active on it. It's Facebook or Instagram for grownups is what we like to call it. So building out that network, being strategic on who you link with, and just as any of the social media platforms have, careful what you click on, because you do get into an algorithm, but use that as a benchmark, not when you have an opening, but try to embrace that platform, LinkedIn, as sort of an everyday best practices. Like some people read the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, maybe give a swim through LinkedIn every other day. And that can give you some really good, not only potential candidates, but just a pulse in the marketplace and what competitors are doing and any type of transition, who's moving from one outfit to another.
Now, I do like the fact that you mentioned be careful of who you link with. What is your guidance? I've got my own guidance on that I use for myself.
Well,
what is your guidance on that?
I try to focus when I am building out my LinkedIn network, to try to find somebody that we have a mutual connection with. LinkedIn's obviously very good at saying this is a second degree connection or a third degree connection. So really the second degree connections, that means somebody is linked with that individual. So you should be able to play that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game pretty easily to say, oh, I see Jeff is connected with my friend Dave, and I can see that there and build that network out. But even more so than just the network, there's a lot of good content. There's white noise on the LinkedIn platform, just as there is on any platform, but it can be a very, very powerful tool, as they all are. Hopefully you're using it for good, not for bad, just as we hope on any platform. So.
Right. I appreciate that. The old use your powers for good and not evil is always good advice at any time. For myself, I really try to keep it a little bit narrower. I try to build up my network, but I typically won't link with anyone unless I've met them face to face.
Interesting.
Or if we're currently doing business together.
Yeah. And
I'm just always worried about the fake profile, and other kinds of things.
And I've got a very good eye for that too, Steve. I see a lot. I've been through a lot, and in our game we call it catfishing. There is a lot of catfishing out there, and now with really, if not daily, then weekly, the smarter AI gets, the smarter they can build out these profiles. So I am cautious to that degree. And I think a pretty good eye of what's real and what's a bot, what's a mask or a ghost or whatever, but can't bet 1,000. So certainly it's there. It is a definitely, I like the rule of thumb, careful who you link with. And look, if you link with somebody and you shouldn't have, you can exit out of that relationship on LinkedIn. You can easily unlink with them too. So don't be afraid to do that if needed. And to expand even beyond a virtual network, I think you briefly mentioned this right now, the good old fashioned networking, face-to-face networking, be that if it's a peer group community or an industry event, a convention, the hotel lobby at a convention, what a great place to meet with people face-to-face. And then you're able to, now back in the day for us, it was, hey, give me your phone number or your resume or your business card. For me now, it's like, I'll be talking to somebody and I'll pull out LinkedIn and I'll look for them on LinkedIn. And you can then do the old, okay, yeah, this is you. And it's a pretty good trigger that's the right guy or gal.
Yeah, that definitely makes it a big difference in being able to engage with people and chat and remember and prep and all of those kinds of things. Now, I hear you saying as a key point to use LinkedIn to build out your network. I know that LinkedIn has really been pushing their, post a job and those kinds of things on LinkedIn as well. What's your understanding or your experience with those? What are you hearing in feedback?
That's a great question. We get a lot of partners ask us this. Hey, here's the job. When you post it, send me the link. And LinkedIn is an aggregator. It is a highly trafficked website. So certainly if you want to get the for sale sign out in front of your house, it's a great platform to do it. But I have a bit of an odd answer when people ask me that. I'm like, we personally here at Apollo of our staffing, we actually don't post many jobs, if at all. And that's really getting into that accessibility into that what we call passive candidate pool, that candidate pool that's not going to reply to us. So back in our day, Steve, when we got started, the term headhunter was very popular, and we wear that like a badge of honor almost. We are headhunters, so we're always on the offensive. I encourage anybody, any hiring manager, any entrepreneur, any COO that's looking to get these critical roles filled, go on the offensive. So sure, you're going to post an ad. I'm not going to sit here and say you shouldn't, but don't let that be your only mechanism, especially on LinkedIn when you can link with somebody. So if you find somebody, perhaps a competitor that's in a similar space, and you can go down and navigate LinkedIn and be able to sit there and say, okay, well, I'm looking for my next controller. I happen to be at Coca-Cola. Well, let's go to Pepsi and see what their team looks like. And sometimes you find people that left Coca-Cola maybe 2-3 years ago, and then you want to maybe tap that resource. So going on the offensive, not relying solely on a posting. These are some of these hacks that I'm talking about. Because you will get dated, the white noise will become deafening, and it will be crippling, that it'll be very difficult to get the results you want. I had a client, I think it was 2 weeks ago, tell me, I posted an ad. It took me basically a week and a half to get to 2 candidates, neither of which were the right fit. Finally, they threw in the towel and they said, oh, can you help us out with this engagement? And that's a huge value add, not only partnering with Apollo, but partnering with any professional. You guys are a top tier MSP. I know that's why, truth be told, we eat your dog food. You're our MSP. So we enjoy that relationship that we have from the Fulcrum group, because we don't want to mess around with things. If we have an issue, like we had a small minor issue a couple of weeks ago. Actually, that's how you invited me to get to this platform on your podcast. It was handled in seconds, and that value there, that the cost of time spent is sometimes it's impossible.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that for a hiring organization, the challenge is your business is built on people. Being able to find the right person is critical to any owner. I always say that's the first big impact I have as an owner is who I choose to hire. So if I understood from you what I thought I understood from you, you were basically saying that you can just throw a name out there, and then candidates have the control over whether to apply or not.
Absolutely.
And then those candidates, if they're looking and they hire with you, they could turn around and hire elsewhere or do something else or whatever. So the best opportunity.
Sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to cut you off, but to dovetail off that, we argue that the very best candidates aren't even looking at that ad. the candidate, that controller that's just just the glass eater and performing at an optimum level, they can't come up for air and apply for a job. So you tapping a network, be that virtual or be that a human network, certainly tap any resource you can when you're looking to make these critical hires at whatever level that is, but don't solely rely on ad response. And if you're a recruiting firm that you've partnered with, that's their primary reservoir of candidates, I would encourage that client to maybe expand their horizons to drill deeper with their staffing vendor and say, well, what else can we do to get a different swath of candidates?
So the position you mentioned earlier where somebody was looking and it took them a week to interview 2 candidates, I guess given a flood in the market, about how many candidates applied, or do you have a sense?
So I can tell you in our stats that, again, we don't post much. So I'm just going to give you sort of our wash rate. As if we were to get an engagement, we would get that down to our recruiting team. And our average is it's 8 to 1 for every candidate that we actually submit, put in front of a client, we have eliminated 8 others. So oftentimes in the old days, somebody wrote a book or whatever, get 5 candidates, interview them, pick the best 3 for the final stage, and then pick your winner. So it's and sometimes that could happen, but oftentimes, especially if you do partner with a firm that knows what they're doing, we can get to that right candidate in the first 1 or 2 submissions. And I like to say sometimes we can be a victim of our own success because we get, wow, that's perfect. Can I see 2 others to make sure I'm hiring the right candidate? So that's another hack I want to throw out there too. Again, whatever the role is, whether it's the first candidate or the 12th candidate or the 25th candidate, if the bells and whistles are going off, it matters not. And especially we found that our mature relationships that we've got with our client partners, they're there. That's part of what they're paying for when they do open up a search engagement to us is, wow, you guys can get right to it. We don't have to coach you up. You know us. This is what we want. I can't tell you how many times, Steve, I've had to say, look, this is the right candidate. We've got one right now that we're I think should be getting put to bed this week, but they actually said that we think he's right. We just want to look at 1 or 2 more. There may not be 1 or 2 more. Don't drag feet. And make no mistake too, this market, even though there is a lot of narrative and hyperbole out there that there's a lot of too many candidates for not enough jobs, we actually find that to be a little bit the opposite. It's don't wait around. When you find that right talent, that great controller or that great service delivery manager, don't drag feet. Move and move at the speed of business, because you're going to miss out. We hate for that to happen.
Now, I would have to imagine that with the this year, AI usage amongst average individuals has increased dramatically. Last year kind of being more of a filling it out and getting started. But how has that impacted incoming resumes? Are you finding it's a lot harder to sift through a resume only to find out that it was AI generated?
To some degree, I'm jaded. So I think I've got a pretty good eye, again, for what looks like fluff, not native language, as they say in the AI world. But that's going to get better and better and better. I've always subscribed to just about anything that I do to the KISS theory. Keep it simple, stupid. So I've seen 8 to 10 page resumes that is just nothing but just a keyword mash. I've seen a 1.5-page resume from a 20-year tenured professional that is leaps and bounds better than that 8 to 10 page resume. We always counsel and this on the candidate side is a nice little hack, is try to keep it simple. Get enough of what you've been doing into a resume. But even before AI was all the rage, I would oftentimes that would be an immediate turnoff to me on a resume as I reviewed it. It's too long. It's too verbose, and it leaves too many questions. We like to see clean, crisp resumes. I'm not a personal big believer on the resume game. I'm not a personal believer of putting graphics on it, putting a portrait or your LinkedIn profile pic, whatever. That's not my particular thing that I look for. Others like it. So I guess it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder to some degree there. But I really think that, and for hiring managers, and a job description as well. If you do post a job description, keep it simple, stupid. Just don't overcomplicate it. Get it out there and get it done. So that's, I think that you can't go wrong there on either side.
Gotcha. And if you're a candidate, make sure you leave off that photo of you winning the karaoke competition.
That's right.
Save that for later
Yes,
discussion.
exactly. Yeah, that'll be on episode 2. So.
Okay. All right. The next statistic that I asked you about was kind of performance. What's going on right now? I call it the heart rate, and I think you'd said something to the effect of vacancy in like a critical technical role costs an organization about $500 a day in lost productivity.
Yeah. And then again, from my seat, when we do partner with clients, there's a cost. We know that as a business owner myself.
That actually seems low to me.
Yeah, but if it's 500 a day and it takes you 6 weeks, as we said earlier, do the math, and then you're not able to bill or get the productivity that you're looking for in the role, it's almost impossible to really compute that. But it's certainly, I never lose sight of the fact that there's a cost in what we do. And being able to acknowledge that the cost of missed opportunity far exceeds the cost of the service. Holistically, I think, is how we should look at it. Because I can't tell you, there was another partner that we worked with on the East Coast that kind of told me the same thing. It's like, yeah, we've interviewed 12 and we get close and it's just not the right fit. And how long has this been open? Oh, we're going on 4 months now. Okay. And then we got the search. Did take a little bit longer than we'd like, but we did get some good results, and it looks like we're very close to getting that buttoned up. And that was about a 3-week burn cycle. And then hopefully we'll have that filled and that candidate onboarded by October 1st, or I don't know when this is going to air. Apologies. We're mid-September right now. So hopefully they'll be able to get that filled within a 5-week window with us from cradle to grave. So that's inception of our search engagement to candidate walking in the front door and start. And they had already been through that cycle for 2 to 3 months, gone through 12, and just going through an interview cycle itself. A hiring manager has to take time out of their day to run the interview cycle, and then they have to huddle and meet afterwards and then decide where to go. So I think you led the session here, Steve, with, it's very costly to do this wrong. In fact, I think I saw somewhere, if the cost of using a professional is high, think about what the cost is to use an amateur. And most people that we deal with, even those that have a built out recruiting team in-house, they still aren't quite have a professional search organization like we've built over our 25 years. So being able to partner, being able to have a scalable strategy too, going beyond those ad postings or job board resume phishing, that's where we want to get our partners. We think that that's where the success lies.
Now, do you find that organizations that are struggling to bring on a candidate within the time frame that they want, are they looking for gap assistance? Do they sometimes look for temporary contracts, or do you find that what organizations are looking for on the technical end is so specialized it's hard to bring in a temporary resource and ramp them up?
Yeah, so a great question. If you've got an accounting and finance team and you're a mid-sized manufacturing firm and you just need a cost accountant or a tax accountant, it's typically, and that's not truthfully where our sweet spot is. That exists, that's out there. Conversely, on large, here in the Dallas area, American Airlines, we've done some work with some subs of theirs that are looking for developers or maybe building out a help desk team, something like that. That is where we typically find that some temporary or fractional or contractual solutions could bear fruit. Not really the pond we live in. We're more of that, back in the day, it used to be known as an executive search firm. And being able to really get in, understand. If my over 25 years have taught me anything, it's really the relationships are key. And I'm certainly, and there's a lot of people, maybe some of which they're going to be watching this, that can attest, I'm not the smartest guy in any room that I'm in. And I'm thankful for that. I do live by that. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I do wholeheartedly. That's why I hang out with you so much, Steve, is because you trump me every day. So, but I really, really preach that, is that being able to partner well, being able to defer, which is why we don't do our own IT. And, it's exactly like we like to eat our own dog food, as we like to say.
Yeah, see, I'm a big basketball guy, so I watched the movie White Men Can't Jump multiple times, and so I have a finely crafted Billy Ho look.
Yes.
Where, I
looks like that guy.
Anyways,
right?
I look like a total nerd all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a real challenge as we work with our partners and we evolve our relationships, because that's really what it's about. It's relationship driven. It's being able to understand the needs, understand the wants, and understand the pitfalls of our partner clients. And trying to go a little bit deeper than just a keyword search on a job description. I like to know, what are the challenges? What's the mission? And then what's the overall goal? What's the 3, 5, 10-year goal? One thing that we see a lot, especially in our space, in our channel, somebody finding the greatest L1 engineer. I'm just making this up randomly. And the problem then becomes that person is so good at being an L1, a tier 1 engineer, the business owner doesn't want to lose that slot. So then they may go and say, well, now I need a level 3. Some of the counsel that I like to give is, at any level, whether you're higher, even at the C level, make sure there's a career trajectory for everybody. Because modern candidates nowadays, money is always a variable. It's never not going to be a variable. It's the society that we live in, thankfully. But if your goal is to hire this tier 1 ticket killer that just crushes tickets, that can't be the end game for that candidate, or that candidate turns into your employee. Hopefully you've got a career arc. Now, there are some people that are just, look, I love being an engineer, working tickets, solving problems. Well, that's great. Let's find a way to take you from L1 to L2 to team lead. So whatever that path looks like, and I'm not the one that would define that for you, but just make sure that they know that you're not hiring them to be where they sit for a lifetime. Even if that is their passion, that's their jam, that's what they're good at. Let's make sure that there is some mobility and going from an L1 to an L2 to an L3, so somewhere along those lines.
So I've got a few takeaways from that section of conversation. One, kind of your vacancy statement about the cost of lost productivity. When you're short on people, that shortage of hours results in technical debt that accrues to the organization and results in lost productivity that kind of accrues over time. I heard you say that if you're a large organization, that as you have people build a path of growth for them, so that they can grow up and progress along the ways. If you're a smaller organization, that's obviously a little bit harder, possibly a source of turnover. If there's not a place for them to go, then they could be a one and done kind of engineer. They come in for a while and then have to look elsewhere for a different role if they don't have it there. And then I think there was something in the middle as well that you'd mentioned that.
Well, that last point.
Any other thoughts out of that?
That last point you just made, I think, is key and crucial, because with smaller groups, smaller companies, it's tougher and tougher to. He just does that task, or she just does that task too well. I can't lose that resource doing that task. That, to me, when our recruiting team engages with candidates, again, these are these passive candidates that we typically work with here. And those are the ones I would encourage anyone listening to this, try to find a path to those passive candidates. It's not easy. There's not a magic bullet, but try to find that path. That's the number one thing they say. Well, there's no career growth. There's nowhere else for me to go. I've mastered this. There's no what's next. And that's where we can come in. On the recruiting team comes in and says, okay, well, we may have the next step for you, and it can't just be money. And that's, we're coming into the new modern workforce is much different than the one that you and I cut our teeth in 25, 30 years ago. And it's just a reality. I mean,
I'm pretty young.
COVID was a thing. We're 5 years past it. It's in the rearview mirror. That's great. But all of a sudden, after that period, or small period in our history, working remote, regardless of the role, or at least hybrid, has now become the standard. I myself, as a business owner, I have a brick and mortar office. I come to it every day, and that's just kind of the old school, get off my lawn in me, I guess, guy shouting that. But if anybody cannot figure out a way to stem that, it's going to become a deterrent. I don't agree with it, but I know that the modern candidate pool does. Believe it or not, we see it on both sides of the fence. We're seeing candidates now more and more. So you know what? I'm sick of work. Can I come into the office a couple days a week? And as business owners, sure, we pay for office space. Well, let's get it used. We'd love to have you in. Others, and probably the majority of the candidate pool, look, I want to work remote as much as possible. I want the work-life balance. I've got a young family. I can be more productive in the evening, late after hours. So we see it on both sides of the fence. But having a strategy for whether or not we have some clients that are 100% remote, and I've had candidates say, I want to go into an office at least every now and again, so I'm not interested in that role. The other side, they say no.
Now, I'm not sure if it's related, and maybe this is me just mentally creating this, but to me, it almost looks like obviously there's a lot of evidence. Microsoft has done some great stuff around work life, and a study about the impact of remote work versus an office, kind of pointing to coming into the office was more valuable from a collaborative level. But it seems like some of the recent layoffs, that it seems like these enterprise organizations, they came out and said, hey, we want you to come back to the office 3 days a week, as opposed to only being in one of your choice. We want you these 2 or 3 days, whatever they are. And then it seemed like after that kind of resulted in a whole bunch of people getting mad or dissatisfied or deciding they didn't want to do that, then there'd be like a big layoff of, I'm guessing, some of those people, or at least a lot of those people. Are you finding that's a strategy that larger organizations are doing, or are they just trying to figure it all out themselves?
Yeah, so great question. And I hope I led you to that, because that is a great talking point. So one of the down or the negatives to a remote workforce is the office relationship of camaraderie and bonding and team building. It is virtually impossible to create that virtually. Certainly you can, but it's not going to be the same as if you're in an office sitting next to, whether that's a cubicle environment, whether that's walking down the halls and seeing doors closed and phone conversations going on. It is very difficult to recreate that. So, and we don't do a lot with big tech, the Facebooks, the Googles, the Apples. That's really not my patch. So, but I do know that they have a tremendous amount of commercial real estate in whatever geographic region they're in. And there is this call to coming back into the office, and it is a pushback. And to your point, Steve, it is very, very easy for a supervisor or a manager to get rid of a virtual employee. It is easier, I should say, to get rid of that virtual employee than the hybrid or the 100% on-site employee. It's just there's a connection there. And that's what we've truly found, is that when people have that difficulty of, well, I can't find another job, and then we drill that back. Well, I only want to work remotely. Okay. Well, could you do hybrid every now and again, this or that? No, 100% remote. Okay. That puts you in a bucket. So there are definite issues, and there's a downside to working remote, especially in a 100% remote environment. I really think that the hybrid, method is probably the one to stay. I don't think that as an industry, as a nation, we're going to go back to 100% on-site every day. That's one of the most obvious statements I've probably made. But as employers are trying to bring their teams back on-site into an office, and if you work for these larger groups, there's offices in a lot of locations. That's an easy way to put your head on a chopping block, so to speak, is to dig your heels in and only want to work remote, because you got to work remote throughout COVID and the year or two aftermath of that. Now we see them coming back in, and they try to plant that flag, and that gets ingrained, and it becomes more of a right than a privilege, and that disseminates all the way down to, well, I can't find a job. It's just, I can't find a job anymore. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I see both sides of the equation, or feel like recognize both sides of the equation. I do like coming into the office and, every day, and, feeling like I'm close to the heartbeat of the organization and stuff. But, I've got a lot of friends in IT, and I've got one of my friends was telling me the other day that his organization forced him to come back in the office 3 days a week, but his entire team is virtual.
Oh,
he covers multiple coasts. So he comes into the office to sit into a cubicle by himself, not near anyone on his team, but, it's a corporate mandate. So, he has to do it, and he can't get around it.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of where I say, okay, I don't get it. I understand the concept and the idea, but, sometimes it's hard to be able to see the reality of what really comes out of it.
It's a conundrum for sure. As I speak for our channel community that we're a part of, I would say most of our peers are trying to get, you just said it, are trying to get more back into the office. I mean, the other thing too with that too is Fulcrum does it better than most because I've been lucky enough to witness it firsthand. But I think your team building, your culture is really unique in our space and any size organization. I know you and David focus on that, and it's a priority to you. And again, without having that face-to-face interaction, it's a little difficult to really suss that out and get that just right. And it's another benefit to coming in, at least at a hybrid. And we'll see how it goes, because like I said earlier, it's not going to come back to 5 days a week. It's just never going to do that. Certain roles, especially in managed services, where you're designed to be able to support remotely, you could do that from the war room at Fulcrum, or you could do that from, that engineer could do that from the war room at Fulcrum, or they could do it from their living room. Just the same.
Or a week in Vegas.
Yeah, that's right. Vegas, Hawaii.
Clock in during your shift.
Yep. Mavs fantasy.
Not that I've ever done that, as far as you know.
Of course not. Of course not.
And so moving on, the last metric I want to talk about was weight. I think of weight as strategy. It doesn't immediately seem like it's the most important thing, but a lot of times it is the most important thing, what our leaders need to know. And I think that I really love the statistic that you pulled here that said 75% of small businesses say that talent shortages are their number one growth constraint. Yeah,
we hear that almost every time we engage with our partner community. It's, again, I think it traces back to that white noise factor that we talked about earlier. It's becoming more and more difficult to just post a job, because it doesn't cost anybody to apply to a job, especially with some of the automation tools that are in play now. Throw 1,000 resumes or applications out, rinse and repeat. And if one of them sticks, you as the job seeker, you won. Well, the job poster, they're the ones that get inundated. And take, for example, just a keyword like server. Okay, so in our world, server means one thing, but if you were in the hospitality space, server could mean quite a different thing. So in that regard, how long does it take for a hiring manager to review a resume, to look at that? They dedicate an hour a day and they get through 10 or 15 resumes, 20 resumes, whatever that may be. They still have 300 more. And of course, they're going to want to wait till they get to the very end to make sure they look at all of it. But when you turn around and you realize all of that time spent, it can become maddening and cumbersome. So that kind of speaks to that. It's very difficult to get talent in. And then when you do find somebody you think is right, what happens if they're not? What happens if they interview very well, but they actually perform the function, the role very poorly? So then you're back at it all over again. So that talent shortage is real. It is a difficult obstacle to overcome, regardless of the size of the organization, regardless of the vertical that organization resides in. It's talent at any level is always at a premium. Accessing that now, even more so.
Now, I'd like to dig into that one a little bit more. I remember reading the book How to Lie with Statistics, and I guess I could interpret this particular statistic a variety of different ways. When we say talent shortages, is it there's not enough people? Is it the skills are so specialized that we can't find the person that we need? Is it perhaps the person the company looking for somebody has an unrealistic expectation of skills that somebody should have? Or is it we can't find the person we want at the rate that we want to pay?
Yeah, so a little bit of all of that. And sometimes, good perfection is the enemy of good. So
yeah, good is the enemy of
there it is.
Or perfect is the enemy. Well, good
so
is
something like that.
Right.
But so if you have a task and it's a repeatable task, whatever that is, accounting, finance, IT, call center, whatever. If the role is filled, but not to the optimum level, then you can say that, okay, well, I still have a talent shortage. Yes, somebody's sitting in the desk, but it's not what I'm looking for. It's not to the level that I need that will provide my clients with the best customer experience. So that we would consider that to still be a talent shortage. So I think a lot of times that's why we always preach, kind of always be hiring. So building out that network, we talked about it earlier, keeping a human network vibrant as well, not just relying solely on social media, but always be in that mode as a hiring manager, as a business owner. If talent presents itself for whatever reason, try to be able to act on that. If somebody loses their job or you hear somebody is unhappy at their job, and just always keep that ear to the ground. But that talent shortage, to your question, Steve, is multifaceted. It is one that is ever-going challenge, and sometimes it's difficult from a recruiting perspective to look at a role that's just been sitting there open for months. Why can't I get this filled? We've all been there. And it's with all the variables mashed together, that can sometimes be a real world, a real deterrent to growth. And whether you've got somebody in a similar role that can do twice the amount of work and half the amount of hours, or you've got somebody that just needs constant handholding, it could vary anywhere on that spectrum. But the talent shortage is all encompassing, and why it's critical, ultimately critical, to be able to access the best candidate pool that you possibly can, and always having that radar up, always being in a hiring mode, always being receptive, always growing your network. These are things that can help stem it when you need it. Because we tell job seekers the best time to look for a job is not when you need one, it's when you've got one. And the same could go for a hiring manager, a business owner, supervisor, is that the best time to look for an employee is not when the seat is open. It may be, don't be reactive in your search to fill your job. Be proactive. Build that out.
So what does that look like? I'm a company, I've got 50 employees, and I don't need a new whatever role right now. What does that mean to me? What should I be doing?
Yeah, so if something comes across your plate, if a guy like me says, hey, Steve, I think you should take a look at this guy. Or if you're out at a Mavs game and bump into a whiz kid of some level, and, I just got to find a place on my team. It could be as simple as, okay, well, you've got someone performing this role that isn't the top grade talent, but is doing a C or a B minus job. It could be a plug and play. Okay, well, be able to look at things, and maybe you do a quick little informal interview and go through that and say, okay, well, if this is what I think it is, then we can plug it out. We could remove this employee because they're not performing at an optimum level, and then we can make this person fill that slot. Or hopefully most of your team is performing well above a C or a B grade level. Find a spot. If there is an opportunity to bring talent on at any level and they can provide production or fill a gap in what you're looking for, absolutely make it happen. And it's tough for small business in particular. You've got budgets that may not be there, but always have an opportunity to talk to somebody. If you've got a good friend that says, Steve, I know your business, you need to talk to this kid, I know him, or you need to talk to this person, I know him, talk to him. It never hurts to talk. And it's a little bit cliche at the end, but if you want to keep their resume on file for when something else opens up, do it. Having that attitude is always, I think, promotes growth and will help stem these situations when you have to have somebody. You may have a small reservoir that you can pull from right away.
Gotcha. Okay. So my takeaway from that is when you're out being an owner or leader of an organization and you meet people, if you talk to somebody that's got a role similar to a role you've got in the organization or a role that you're missing in the organization, just consider how would they fit? Would be better off with this person than our current person, or, not necessarily actively making a change or looking to hire, but just think about it critically, just to kind of force yourself maybe at the next force ranking of your team. Think about, hey, this guy has dropped to a C. Things haven't been quite working out. Maybe I should reach out to that person I met, a couple months ago, or, maybe it is time to, open up the position, put him on a PIP, do whatever, but think about those people that I've met recently.
And it costs virtually nothing to just literally, keep that active, throw that resume in the desk drawer and know that, okay, as you forecast and look and build your pipeline for the next month, quarter, the next year, this could be somebody that could be an asset to the team. Never miss an opportunity. I can leave you with this one little anecdote. I remember we had a partner in the Washington, D.C. area that had their number one tech. And here I am, Mr. Recruiter, talking to him about, okay, well, all this strategy, this and that. And he looks at me and says, well, I want to make enough names here. I want another Steve. So that's great. How'd you find Steve? Well, I went to Office Max one day and I had a problem and he solved it. And I hired him there on the spot. Small little entrepreneur. Now, at that point in time, that candidate had risen up to, I believe it was help desk manager. So, but that's where they started. That was the genesis of that, because he had his radar on. He just saw talent regardless of where it was. I think it was actually a technical role. Regardless, that's where he grabbed it. And he didn't even go into Office Max to look for an L1 help desk. He just happened to find some talent there at that, hired him out of retail, and then he took his career arc with him and built all the way up to help desk manager. It's a great story. So one that can resonate, I think.
I think, for us, we use a DISC profile to track behaviors and find out what people have certain tendencies and stuff, but also kind of have my personal things that I personally do, like people who've been in retail and food service.
Absolutely.
For some reason, they just always seem to be better at customer service, better at communicating. I say that I can teach anyone about technology, but I can't teach good communication, or I can't teach people how to care.
Yeah, some great,
so I've
some
always
great
liked
hacks.
those people.
That's one of them. Service industry. Going to maybe a trade school or a community college and then getting a degree, or whether or not they got the degree, irrelevant, but seeing somebody working while they're in school, ex-military, collegiate athlete, regardless of the sport. These are good traits. Eagle Scout, that's a great one. I was not an Eagle Scout. I had some friends that were, but obtaining that, it's a no-joke certification there. You have to do a lot of things to become an Eagle Scout. So here's some really nice little hacks. You identified a couple there. That service industry play is one that I love to see. And truthfully, I love to see somebody that was a busboy, then turned into a bar back, then turned into the bartender. Yeah. So you can see that career progression on these jobs. And then nowadays, it's becoming more and more rare, but tenure. If somebody's hopping jobs every 6-8 months and they do so every year for the last 10 years, odds are he's going to hop his job on you next. So, that's just the data that we have in front of us. So being able to traverse that, although nowadays it's almost become the norm. If you see somebody that's got 2 to 4 years tenure at any one company that's under the age of 30, that's pretty much of a head nodder. That's pretty good. So, but finding those hacks as a business owner, as a hiring manager, and you hit the nail on the head right there, Steve. That service industry, it's great to find people with hustle, people with grit, and then people that, can work some pretty odd hours sometimes too. And that's needed in our world for sure.
On one of my prior podcasts, I had an HR consultant on, and one of the things I liked that he said, and he was relating his stuff to sports, like HR to high performance athletes. And he said one of the things that we need to do a better job of in our interviews is interviewing for coachability. Just someone who's willing to take direction and listen and grow and, kind of follow what works and those kinds of things. And I thought that was a very good
I'm going to probably steal it from him. So thank him when you see him next.
Well, actually, you're going to steal it from me. So you have to thank me, but tell me every time you use it so I can thank him.
But I love it. I love that, finding somebody, interviewing for coachability, because I've got kids. I know you do too. And coaching your child athletes is challenging. And one of the things I tried to instill on my kids was, you have to be coachable. That is a life skill that will stay with you forever. And I think it's great. I totally agree and support that.
Well, we're coming near the end of our conversation, but I got to ask just one last thing. What are the typical recruiting strategies that kind of see out there?
Well, like I said, all too often we see people that rely too heavy on simply ad response. And it's just, in today's world, I don't find that to be a very scalable strategy. Can it work? Absolutely, yes. Referrals, great. Yes, they work. They also backfire sometimes, but yes, they're great. If you've got a trusted employee and they say, look, this is a friend of mine, we work together at XYZ, I think he'd be great here, you'd be foolish not to use that as an avenue to talent. But defining a strategy. You mentioned testing, as I kind of pivot back to that real quick. There is nothing at all wrong with putting tests, predictive index, Wonderlic, DISC, all of those. That's great data. But one of the things that we always preach is don't become a victim of analysis by paralysis. So get all the data together, get all of that together, and then use that as in the equation. Is this candidate the right fit for my job? All too often, I've seen people use a testing platform on both sides of the fence. This person tested off the charts, but he's kind of a dud. But look at his test scores. It's perfect. It's right in range. Okay. And conversely, it's like, man, this was a great interview. Perfect. Bombed my test. Unfortunately, you got to wash them out. I would counsel you, look, use it all as raw data, add it to the equation, see what's right. But all too often, we find that that's really the primary recruiting strategy. And a lot of times, as we partner with a mid-sized MSP, it may be the owner's wife, it may be the office manager. So there is no one person that does nothing in that organization except for recruiting. HR is wide. Recruiting is one little sliver of HR. So even at a mid-sized 50 to 100 person MSP, they may have an HR manager, but they still don't have a recruiting manager. And if they are large enough to have one, oftentimes that recruiting manager is focused on that, very task driven. They've got a job opening, they need to fill it. So they move as quickly as they can. They bring as many options to the table. And a lot of times that's quantity over quality. So craft a recruiting strategy, whether that's partnering with a shop like Apollo VAR Staffing, or if you write a playbook on your own, try to hit those passive candidates. Try to go after candidates that aren't replying to postings. Try to go after candidates that don't have a resume ready. That's another kind of Apollo VAR Staffing specialty. I've done placements. We've placed candidates that don't have resumes. How is that possible? Well, we can take that offline and go from there. But yes, I've done it multiple times. So, and I've placed roles that don't have job descriptions either. So how do I do that? Well, again, we can go offline on that, but that all focuses around that relationship. And that's truly what I think, not only our community, but knowing you as long as I have, Steve, and you and David, one of the strongest assets of the Fulcrum group is that relationship piece, that culture. You guys, and I hope I self-classify myself as this as well, you guys are truly SMEs and relationships. And that's what I think it's all about, being that SME and relationships.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Smaller organizations, we don't have the scale of much larger organizations. And I just always remember my Colin, he said something like culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
And that just always stuck with me that, if you get everyone swimming in the same direction and you're all on the same team, then you can do wonderful things.
I agree.
Now, how about for yourself? We've talked through a lot of different things today. You just had some great summary points there. Which of those would you say is the home run? Which is the one that you think is, hey, if you only take away one thing today, this is the thing I want you to take away.
Yeah, I speak on it a lot, and it is the one kind of nugget that I like to leave behind. And I've said it a couple times, but how, as an organization, can you, regardless of the organization, regardless of the vertical, how can you access the candidate pool that is not and will not reply to your ad? How do you hire that candidate? I don't have the answer, by the way. So, but as a takeaway, trying to penetrate and swim, and that's where you want to swim, and figure out how to do that. And like I said, this is not a magic bullet. I can't answer that. But being able to get beyond that and being able to get a candidate that will interview that is like, hey, look, I wasn't even looking for a job, but this came around. Find out a method to access that candidate.
You almost sound a little bit like Jerry Maguire saying, help me, help you.
To some degree, yeah. Again, it's funny because I oftentimes look at what we do as, to some degree, being sort of like an agent, a talent agent, both for the client, because sometimes a lot of times we'll do that. We advocate for a client to a candidate, and then obviously to the client for the candidate. So we like John Doe because of this. And then when we're talking to another candidate, Jane Smith, hey, you need to like our client because of this. So we're kind of in the middle. And one thing that I've always recognized we've had Apollo now for pushing 25 years, but we've been in the search world for pushing 27 years, is that all of this that we do, the transactions, nothing of it has to do with me. 0% of this. Okay. It's all about the client, our partner clients, and about the candidates. I'm just a steward of the transaction. I'm in the middle, but it has absolutely nothing to do with me. And as an entrepreneur myself, I like to help Steve Meek. I get a lot out of that. And there are several partners that we've helped kind of get to some really stages in their career, gotten a few to an acquisition stage. There's a couple that actually walk around and tell people that we help them get acquired. So that's cool and all. But at the end of the day, it was not about me. It was about them. And I try never to lose sight of that. Is that it's not about me. It never will be.
And what about other things related to that? I think of them as prescriptions. To your last comment about how can I as an organization or you as an organization, find those candidates that aren't looking that we want. But what prescriptions do you have to go along?
Yeah, I mean, I think I dropped a few nuggets earlier. Try to build out those networks. LinkedIn, again, those connections are powerful on LinkedIn. A lot of times people look at it, and we talked about it, connect with the right people. Careful who you connect with. Definitely careful with who you connect with. Use that as a primer to try to stay within your small circle of second-degree connections, like you said. Connecting with people you meet face-to-face or you're currently in business with, and so on and so forth. So certainly do that. I think being active in peer group community is whatever industry you're in. I think it's crucial.
That's a good.
It is crucial to collaborate with peers, like-minded individuals. If you're a law firm, you're in a legal society, go to your local geographic. We're in the Dallas area. I know there's several bar association, things like that, but just try to embrace that. And like I said earlier, acknowledge and have the hubris to say, look, I'm always learning. I want to learn more. I'm a big Jeopardy fan. I tell my wife that because I want to learn something every day. So we watch Jeopardy every night. And that doesn't work. I'm not that smart. But, again, I try to just fill my brain, try not to doom scroll on the phone as much as we all do nowadays, but really try to be on that lifelong learning journey. And it is a journey. It's never going to end. And just being able to use your resources, again, LinkedIn, we talked about, your personal network, peer groups, things like that. And as I said earlier, if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're probably in the wrong.
Yeah, I used to really appreciate destroying all the Jeopardy competitions around the house until my daughter got a little bit older and started showing me what the business was. So I've moved on to then podcasts and books on tape. So
there we go.
So I'm doing okay. And actually, books, around hiring, I always think of.
Read. Yeah,
I actually used to do a lot of top grading, but then I think Who, the A Method for Hiring came out later, and I kind of ascribed a little bit more to that. But, even that got to be more than a quick hiring process would bear. For a while there, people were getting offers before I was getting to the second stage of my interview process. So definitely kind of had to adapt post-COVID.
Well, and if you choose to partner with somebody, you've partnered with them with a search firm for a reason, and trust that. And the amount of work that goes into, I think I mentioned it earlier in our session, to even presenting one candidate to you, to our partner clients, just giving them one. I mean, that's at least a dozen man hours that went into saying, okay, here's a candidate and here's why we think they're good. So hopefully you can clearly, I run a search firm, so I'm an advocate for partnering with a search firm. It's impossible for me to partner with everybody. So whoever you partner with, trust them, and you chose them as your partner for a reason. And if you don't trust them, you should maybe ask yourself why. And if you do have that partner relationship with the search firm, when it comes to filling talent gaps, then everything should move fairly smoothly. And being able to get deal cycles down into this 2 to 4 week window where we like to keep it is totally possible, with that relationship. Again, you could do it yourself too. You don't have to use a firm. Again, I would advocate it probably gives you a better chance of success, but being quick and trusting your gut, I've seen that happen a lot too, far too many times. I just didn't feel it. Okay. But usually that gut reaction is right. And if you absolutely love somebody because your gut's telling you that, get all the data behind it, validates that your gut. And that's always a win. In my opinion.
Well, likewise, you should take it as a kudos. There's been times in our history I didn't want to use you, but it turned out that you had exactly the right candidate at exactly the right time, and against financial desires, I went ahead and did it, and it turned out to be a great decision. So that's why we're still talking and keeping in touch.
There we go. Well, we always appreciate that. Like I said, it's never about me, and I always respect the fee. I totally get that, especially in our community. I will never take it lightly. And you eat my dog food, and I eat yours, Steve. So yes, there is some ulterior motives there. So for sure.
Well, and I guess on that note, that kind of brings us to the end of our doctor's appointment.
Well, I feel much better.
I think I'm glad. That's the whole point. I do it all for the people. I just apply science and logic to letting you resolve your own problems.
Indeed. Well, I appreciate the platform, and never, if anyone, Steve, knows how to get a hold of me, I think maybe there'll be some crawl with my contact information on it. Would be honored and privileged to speak to anyone that's a friend of Steve, is a friend of mine.
Well, I appreciate that, and I also appreciate how you worked in a recruiting pun. Indeed. It took me a second to catch it,
for sure.
But
Totally done intentionally.
I caught it. I catch everything. Well, thanks to James for all your efforts and helping us learn a little bit about hiring and scaling your team, and just kind of building some people first processes to kind of help you through that effort. Thanks for your help today. As we're at the end of our time, I just want to say thanks to everyone, all of our audience, for listening in and hearing what James and I had to say. And if you liked some of the stuff that James had to say, James, how can they reach you?
Real easy. You can varstaffing.com, VAR staffing.com. And on LinkedIn, of course, James Bier with Apollo VAR Staffing on LinkedIn. Very easy to find. both platforms, LinkedIn and our website. So,
and we'll make sure and have that in the show notes as well. And then for myself, you can always reach me at the Fulcrum Group. My email, the doctor, spelled out, the doctor at fulcrumgroup.net. You can also call our main number, 817-337-0300. If you're liking the information and hoping to see more of our podcasts over all kinds of topics, all business topics, you can subscribe to my podcast, Talk to the Doc. It's on pretty much every major platform there is, as well as YouTube. So subscribe, like, listen, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for everyone. I'm your host, Steve the Dr. Meek, and the doctor is out. Thanks so much. See you next time.